welcome, fantasy owners, for another edition of the Fantasy Sports News and World Report. I'm your host, Bryan Lyles, and this is a very big episode. Why? Because it's our 50th episode here on the show, and the cool thing is we're going to talk about something really big, and it's the NFL, and it's the end of the season, and it's Super Bowl week, and all that greatness. So I bring in two big-time fans here. One is the historian of the Redskins, Mr. Mike Richman. How you doing?
Hey, Brian. Yeah. Thank you very much.
And I understand you have a new show out there in the radio land.
Tell me about it. New radio show. It's called Burgundy and Gold Flashback, similar to my TV show,
right.
Burgundy and Gold Magazine. But B&G Flashback airs on Sports Talk 570 here in the D.C. area, Sunday mornings from 9:30 to 10. And I'm interviewing Redskins from the past. I've had guys like Billy Kilmer, Vince Permuto on, Kenny Houston. So it's just reminiscing about the old days of Burgundy and Gold.
Okay. And granted, even though he's in disguise, you know, he's another Redskin fan. Ulysses Campbell, producer and host of the Fantastic Forum. How you doing, my friend?
Doing all right. This is your 50th show?
50th.
God, give me a little bump there, man. I didn't realize that you were on for that.
Yes.
I feel honored.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and let's start off something big. Like I said, we're recapping the NFL year. A lot of historical things happened this past season. And we're going to start off with the stud of the year. When you were on the first, during the premiere episode of the season, I put out there Michael Vick should be, the stud that everyone should pick. And I'll admit, he had a very not-so year.
And when I said it was going to be a stinker, you said, oh, well, that's because you hate the Eagles. And he turned out to have a bad season.
Well, the Eagles themselves had a bad year. So it was kind of like, even though they had some mild chances of being in the playoffs, but unfortunately, Michael Vick was, I would say, was more average. So you can say he balanced out. But I'm going to start with you, Mike. Who you felt was your stud of the year that a lot of people enjoyed having on their team?
I would go with Drew Brees. I mean, the man set an NFL record for passing yardage in one season. He broke Dan Marino's record by far. He completed 71% of his passes, 46 touchdowns, and only 14 interceptions. Actually, you could really pick any of those guys in the top 5 in terms of quarterbacks in the NFL. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford, or Eli Manning, who I think is now part of the NFL elite. LaShawn McCoy, I think, used to be another one from the Eagles. Great running back, league-high 17 touchdowns. And then a receiver I just want to mention, Calvin Johnson. He was a stud.
Right. Yuli, did you have a stud on your fantasy? I know we were playing against each other during a couple leagues here and there. So who you thought was your stud guy?
Well, there are a couple of guys that I wanted to mention, Brian. I have to say that I agree wholeheartedly with Mike about Drew Brees. I mean, his stats by far, again, I'm sure he must have been the #1 scoring guy in everybody's fantasy league. But I also think it's worth mentioning Aaron Rodgers, who threw for 4,643 yards, 45 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions, which is just unbelievable. Tom Brady, and Matthew Stafford. But I also want to throw in there, I like the fact that you mentioned LaShawn McCoy. He did very well for me in a couple of fantasy teams. But I also want to mention Cam Newton, because all the other guys we've mentioned were expected to be studs. But this kid, as a rookie, came in, threw for 4,051 yards, 21 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, but with his feet, he ripped off 706 yards and another 14 touchdowns. So, I mean, I would, even though I say Drew Brees, Cam Newton is the other guy I'd like to slip in there, because for me in fantasy, in order to be a stud, there's got to be that steal guy that you get who nobody expects to do well, but who performs well for you.
Yeah. I'm in full agreement with Drew Brees. I mean, I mainly had him in one league as my primary quarterback, except for, of course, the bye week. He was Mr. Reliable. Like a few years ago, it was Peyton Manning, and he kind of helped me for 2 years, with my fantasy team and got me to win a championship. Drew Brees is that type of quarterback you want to try to get early, and I think he now stepped that up going into next year's, fantasy drafts. I think a lot of people will be looking at him, hopefully bearing, no injuries, and, the team is still the same as this year is. I think Drew Brees will be a #1 pick by far for a lot of people. I can agree with the fact of, Aaron Rodgers is a good secondary. I mean, he's having that NFL MVP year. So, I mean, his numbers by far is, I wouldn't say similar to Brees, but at least he, again, someone who is a reliable quarterback that you need to give you a lot of big numbers. Let's flip the switch, and if you tell by the logo I put in is a nice little toilet seat. That's the stinker of the year. Yes. Now last year I had Chad Ochocinco Johnson as my stinker of the year, but things have changed because basically Chad sort of just fades himself out, so I don't have to worry about him. But Yuli, who was your stinker of the year for this year?
Well, this one was kind of tough for me, Brian, I got to admit, because my criteria for judging the stinker of the year is a guy who you expect to do really well, but who just falls off the map. I hadn't thought about Michael Vick. I'd really need to take a look at his numbers, but he was hurt also. So anytime you suffer an injury, I say, well, that causes your numbers to go down, and you can't really blame a guy for injury. Two guys who fell into that category for me were Miles Austin of the Dallas Cowboys and Joseph Adai of the Colts. Austin only ended up playing in 10 games and Adai 12. But I noticed that Austin's numbers were down a little bit from last season. He had really performed well for me when he first came on 2 years ago. The other guys I had down were Chad Ochocinco Johnson, as you mentioned. But the one thing with him is he's old, you know? I mean, so I can't blame him, but so much.
How much was really expected of him? I don't think the expectations were very high.
Well, you're right, but this was a guy who was an elite wide receiver whose numbers did not add up and who was not injured for the entire season, you know. But again, because of his age, I had some difficulty including him. The same thing with Hines Ward. Yeah, but Hines Ward's numbers have been like, you know, for the past couple of years. The other guys that I had on were Devin Hester, but he's basically a kick returner anyway, and I mean, he still was doing it, kick returning, even though the NFL had these rule changes. But the guy who I'd like to single out is Mark Sanchez with the Jets, because now, okay, the thing is, you scrutinize this guy's numbers. He had greater completion percentage, more yards, more TDs this season, but you break him down on a game-by-game basis, and he wasn't consistent, which means that if you were a fantasy owner and you get this guy and you start him every week, well, you know, you have your good games where you're relying on him, but then you have your bad games where it's like, what the heck am I doing with this guy? And in fact, at the end of the season, because I had so many injuries on my various fantasy teams, this guy was available because somebody had gotten tired of the streaky performance, kicked him to the curb, and he was perfect for me because I was desperate. You know, there was nobody else out there, you know. So I know firsthand about this streakiness because, you know, one game he's got a great game, but then the next game it's like, oh, you're not really doing it for me, Mark. So Mark Sanchez is my stinker of the year.
Wow.
Mark Sanchez.
Mark Sanchez. So he gets the toilet seat.
First, I just want to say something about Sanchez. He's not an elite level quarterback in the NFL. So what types of numbers is he supposed to put up?
Well, his development for the past couple of years had been sort of on the ascent. And even though his numbers, if you just look at the numbers per se, he appeared as if he hadn't necessarily plateaued, but he was about where he was last year. But he did not continue to develop the way that the Jets needed for him to get them where they wanted to, especially for a club that made the championship game 2 years running.
All right, let me ask you this. Do you feel, you know, because lately now the Jets have been in the talk about, you know, the dissension within the Jets, and do you feel it is Sanchez's fault? Because really, I don't see it, because I really think it's that whole team was just, you know, granted primed to be in one of the premier elite teams in the AFC and just didn't produce this year.
No, of
I
course
don't feel
it's not Sanchez's fault.
It's not entirely his fault. I mean, Santonio Holmes, I think he could be a cancer in that locker room. There are other players. LaDainian Tomlinson said that it's the most dysfunctional locker room he's ever been around. So it's not just Sanchez. It's not just one player.
Right. Mike, crap flows downhill, though, man. I think if you want to look at the Jets, you start no further than their head coach.
Wow.
This guy is a
blowhard.
He's terrible. Yeah, I mean, and he's the one who sets the tone. And this is why the players carry on.
I mean, Brian doesn't go back this far, but you remember Buddy Ryan.
Oh, heck
okay. I can go back
and
that far.
Rex Ryan is a carbon copy of Buddy Ryan, okay? And a lot of the Jets' problems stem from his big mouth, okay? And I think it's going to be only one more season. Say it's a 7-9, 8-8 year, he's going to be out.
Wow, okay. We'll talk more about that later in the show. Give me your stinker of the year.
Okay. My stinker is Deshaun Jackson. And I'm not picking another Eagles player because I hate the Eagles. Deshaun Jackson, there was so much expected of him this year. Fastest guy in the league. He only had 58 receptions, which was 46th in the NFL. 961 yards, 4 touchdowns. But get this, he only had 5 catches of more than 40 yards. I mean, he's the type of guy who's supposed to stretch the field. Not only that, he was a head case. He was suspended for 1 game for missing a team meeting, benched 1 game for dropping too many passes. And remember when Vince Young was talking to him on the sidelines, and he was basically looking out into space, just ignoring him? And this was a contract year for him.
I was going to point that out.
Contract year. This is the year you're supposed to step up because the big money's awaiting you. So I don't think he performed well. There are other guys that you could throw in there. Andre Johnson. Now, he was nicked up a little bit, but his numbers were way down. Jermichael Finley, tight end for the Packers. He didn't do that well. And Chris Johnson, running back for the Titans.
Yeah, he started off very slow because he was holding out. Yeah. I'm going to be stinker of the year. I'm going to go back to the Jets, and I feel, granted, you can say, like you said earlier, it could be related to injury or what have you, but I feel LaDainian Tomlinson is, I mean, he's on his way to say his swan song very soon. The numbers just weren't there. And I think him and Sean Green, going back and forth has kind of affected him because, granted, when he was coming to the Jets, he was supposed to be the premier back, and it's based, especially when you're basing off of his previous.
Supposed to be the premier back.
Trust me, yes, he was. He was, even though they had Sean Green, and they were trying to. They based it everything off
exaggeration.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking.
again, that's based off coaching. But the way I'm saying is like. They pretty much thought that, they're trying to get the LTD, the guy who scores those touchdowns back in 2006 in his NFL MVP year. And these last few years, granted injuries, you can throw that in there. He was very inconsistent. And also the real key part was at the fact that he only had 1 good week, and that was week 3. And he is not the same player as before. And I think there's that, I don't know what the Jets are going to try to do next year. To try to either help him out or, better yet, worse, maybe they'll have to let him go because, like you said, they're not getting younger.
He's creaky.
He's
very. Even going to be back for another season.
Yeah, so
I just hate when people refer to this guy as No,
I thought I'd say LTD. That's why I say LTD.
LT is a linebacker who played for the Giants.
I know that.
There's only one.
I know. That's why I say LTD. Anyway, we're going to take a timeout and take a tea. And when we come back, we'll have our Super Bowl picks, and we'll look into the future. Maybe try to help fix the Jets somehow. So stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Shereen Nicole. Stay tuned for more fantasy sports news and world report.
What's up, guys? It's Shantae as usual. Welcome back to the second half of Fantasy Sports News and World Report.
If we never thought about the little things.
And welcome back to the 50th episode of Fantasy. I was about to say Fantastic Forum.
It could be.
Yeah, it could be. Fantasy Sports News and World Report. I'm Bryan Lyles. Yes, I host this show. We have Ulysses Campbell, the host and producer of Fantastic Forum, as you can tell by the Superman shirt. And we have the Redskin historian and host of Burgundy Gold Magazine and his new radio show, Burgundy Gold Flashback, Mike Richman. Welcome, guys, again. Down to the Final Four of the NFL. We had conversations.
The punches are going to be
yeah,
thrown.
we had conversations the night before about mostly the AF side. The NFC side, it's kind of like, it's nice to see not only the Giants, granted it's been 4 years since their Super Bowl championship, but seeing the Niners back, I'm really impressed with Jim Harbaugh and what he has done. I've always been impressed with his persona. Even the days when he was the first few years with the Bears and dealing with Mike Ditka and all that stuff, and everyone thought that shattered his chances of being a top quarterback. But granted, he became captain comeback with the Colts and during the that run in the '90s and all that stuff. But I felt that He's the right guy right now for that team, which is great. But let me go back to the AFC side. If my discussion with Ulysses last night.
I just need to interject something since you're going off here, okay? Because you're a Ravens fan, and the Ravens are still in it.
The viewers already know that.
But we need to make sure that we specify that, because I really think that your objectivity in this instance falls into question by virtue of that. And the only other thing I want to say is about the 49ers. Here. I stick this in, since you mentioned, all right, you're very impressed with this young man who's the head coach. And I think we all are, and particularly for a first-year head coach. But I also think that you need to make mention of Mike Singletary and the contribution he made in terms of sort of setting it up. Now, of course, Singletary wasn't there this year. He didn't coach anybody. He didn't draw up any game plans, any kind of thing like that. All goes with, boy captain comeback. But I think anytime you come into a new situation as a head coach, whatever you were left by the other coach definitely makes a difference. It's just like the Buccaneers that year. And who knows what we're going to be seeing in terms of what happens with the 49ers.
Right.
Could be even more of a similarity at the end of the season with what happened with Chucky when he first went to the Buccaneers.
Right.
But you had to look and say, well, all right, what did the previous coach leave this guy that he was working with?
Okay. He did inherit some great players.
He had the players. The problem is it was their mental state. And what Mike Singletary did, now granted, Mike Singletary, everyone who's known Mike Singletary is the type of guy, he's full hard on, he had that middle linebacker mentality, which was explained, and well known within his coaching. He, hard hitting is just like, you got to get it, yelling and, benching Vernon Davis, yelling at Alex Smith, trying to get everyone to wake up and all that stuff. Okay.
And I think it helped.
But it didn't help. It didn't.
He may have gotten Vernon Davis to where he is right now.
I doubt that.
I'm not saying straightened him out.
I really think it's just sort of like, how do you interpret it? I felt that Mike Singletary, you can say he helped straighten him out, but at the same time it kind of hurt him, because you have everyone kept saying for like the 2-3 years that Singletary was the coach of this team. Everyone's saying, okay, the Niners have a chance to be, get at least a playoff contender. Last year, we saw the freaking Seahawks, below 500 team, win in the division. Why? Because the Niners somehow, mentally and physically, just couldn't deal with whatever's going on with Mike Singletary. And that's why they didn't make it last year. And the year before that, again, they had high hopes for the Niners to be an elite team, for at least the NFC West, as bad as it was. And the only team you may have to deal with was either the Cardinals or the Seahawks. Again, the mental and the whole aspect of where your team was, again, with Mike Singletary as the coach, didn't help.
I just want to say where you really have to give Harbaugh credit is with Alex Smith. I mean, he turned that guy's career around. He created a game plan for that offense where they were able to work around Smith's weaknesses.
Right.
And he's actually taken steps to become one of the better quarterbacks in the league.
Right. Well, I would say the league. I just think as of right now, I think especially the playoff game he had with the Saints, I mean, that right there is...
That was a hell of a game.
Yeah, hell of a game. Not just only that, but just...
And Smith played a hell of a game.
Yes, and that was a game for him that...
Improvising, doing things on his own.
Right.
How about that run?
That was amazing.
Right.
I'm telling you.
Here's a guy's not known to have wheels.
No. So he's able to take something, and he finally, and learning from Jim Harbaugh is a great thing. So let's say this, as of right now, I feel that between the Niners and Giants, Giants have a good defense, so do the Niners. But the key aspect is who will stop the run first, and who's able to get out of that mess and be an elite quarterback. Eli can do that, and he's been able to make huge plays. Amazingly.
Giants are better.
They are a better running team. At the same time, I just think that their Cinderella dance will end. And as much as you think I'm leaning towards the San Francisco 49ers to take the NFC. Who do you have for the NFC?
I'm leaning toward the Giants. I think, number one, that pass rusher that they have, Jason Pierre-Paul, Osi Umenyiora, and Justin Tuck, I mean, they're really playing well right now.
It's a jailbreak.
They are going to put pressure on Alex Smith. And that defense is a lot healthier than it was during the regular season, which was a major reason for that 9-7 record and the slides they were having during the year. That defense is stepping up. Also, Eli Manning, like I said earlier, is now one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL. He is definitely. That guy,
I'd like
he
to
doesn't
take it,
have,
but I can't. I can't take it from him.
he doesn't have the greatest mobility, but he knows how to move around in the pocket and find open receivers. Now, granted, he's got some great guys to throw to. Hakeem Nicks. I mean,
I didn't think they were Super Bowl.
Really, they weren't. But the key thing is they stepped up, and that's the good thing.
Victor Cruz?
Yes.
Why that guy?
Who the hell is
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, forget about London Fletcher for a second. That guy should have been in the Pro Bowl. And then Mario Manningham. I mean, that's a great trio right there. I think another piece that has really helped the Giants is the return of Ahmad Bradshaw to that backfield.
I had him in my league, and he got hurt, and I was crying. I was crying. I picked up that freaking guy with New England.
Bradshaw and Brandon Jacobs, if that backfield gets rolling against the 49ers, no matter how good the 49ers defense is, Giants are going to take that game. That game's going to be won on the ground by the Giants.
Pretty much. How do you see the NFC?
I got to go with Mike all the way on this one. I mean, I like the 49ers. I like what I saw against them and the Saints. I don't know that the Giants could have done something similar, but I like the way these two teams match up. Now, I think that playing in San Francisco, in this case, doesn't hurt the Giants. I mean, they're road warriors. I mean, they're one of the best performing teams on the road in the playoffs. So, if they can get this ground game going, I mean, and not get overwhelmed, because San Francisco has got some D also. But I see them being able to pull this game out, kind of gut it out.
And I wouldn't necessarily call it a Cinderella ride either. I think this Giants team is really good. And you see how I'm playing up the Giants, even though they're an NFC East rival.
No. But you know something?
I'm being objective about it. I really am.
But that's part of what I like about it.
All right, now, okay.
Wait, that's part of...
Okay, hold on. We got to get to the AFC. I'm going to, like I said, we've got those starting. I want to explain what happened to our conversation beforehand, the night before. Here's the deal. Julie and I had an explanation where you were explaining to me how New England will probably, historically, will be over the Ravens because they're hungry for it because they lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl 42 and determined, and of course the beatdown they got, in that wild card race. Right. Here's the deal. I can agree with you on how New England can win this on this aspect. As long as if New England continues to do what they're doing, which is pretty much air out all the time, they'll win this. Because the one thing the Ravens can't do is they cannot win this as a shootout. Joe Flacco is a good game manager. I give him that. And that's how the Ravens won their Super Bowl in Super Bowl 35. Pretty much, Trent Dilfer was a good commander on the field. They didn't expect him to just, hey, just move the ball and you'll be fine. And that's what Joe Flacco needs to do. But if you start getting into a shootout, forget it.
Can I say one thing about being a game manager in a conference championship game? That's not very flattering. You don't want a quarterback who's a game manager at this point in the season. You want a quarterback who can take over.
You want an elite guy.
That's why Flacco is not that guy right now.
I think
he's not going to be that guy ever.
Well, hey, it worked for, like I said, it worked for Trent Dilfer. And here's the other aspect.
And they showed Trent Dilfer the door.
Okay,
yeah.
Ravens don't have the same caliber
Brian
defense.
Issue. But here's the deal, quickly, is this. I just think that the Patriots defense is their main problem.
Oh, they suck.
Yeah.
They suck.
If the Ravens continue to just start off, and the main thing is give it to Ray Rice, keep constant, give it to Ray Rice, that offense will be fine. And the one thing you want to do is keep Tom Brady on the sideline. And that's how I see this game going to be. Now, as much as you think that I'm going for Ravens, which is true, I personally feel like I will definitely be seeing Harbaugh Bowl 2. This will be brother versus brother again. And in the end,
it'd be a great story.
It will be not just a great story. I also see it as being as little brother will finally get his reward. I really do see the Niners winning the Super Bowl.
Okay.
You're calling Ravens, Niners, and the Niners win?
Yes.
Well, maybe you're not as much of a homer as I thought.
Because I just think that, one, they've already played them. They already know how to deal with them. And all Jim has to do is just readjust. And what we've seen, if Alex Smith is this playoff version of Alex Smith is a lot better than he was in the regular season, I can see that happening.
That's a Very bold prediction on his part. Being a fan of the
So
Ravens.
we got 2 minutes left, so and sadly we couldn't get to our NFL season prediction. But give me your Super Bowl
There
prediction.
will be an NFL 2012 season.
Yes,
That's my prediction.
Mike, tell me your AFC champion and your Super Bowl winner.
AFC champion will be the Patriots, and that's because of Joe Flacco. I think that he's just not an elite level quarterback right now. He's not the guy. He's been to several championship games already. I mean, the guy, I don't think he's ready to take the next step. He finished with an 80 quarterback rating on the season. That's rookie level rating numbers. Okay.
I have other issues, but I'll
Okay. Well, anyway, I think the Patriots are going to take it.
Okay.
Patriots over the Giants.
Yuli?
Patriots, Giants. As much as I hope the Giants win, because I'd love to say that the Super Bowl champion got beat twice by the Redskins, I think that New England is going to win on the AFC side. They meet up, and New England is dying to see the Giants again. They are dying to see them. They're going to have flashbacks, and they're going to say, we're going to put these guys through the turf for what they did to our perfect season.
Okay.
Brady has been on a mission all year.
Well, we'll see. Well, again, sorry for not getting the. We can't help you, Jets. I'm sorry. We ran out of time. So maybe maybe in August we'll do it. So again, Yuli, Mike, thank you for being on the show.
It's an honor.
And
Congratulations on your 50th.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. So sadly, we don't have enough time for the Fantasy World Girls. So we'll see a plethora of some of the ladies that have featured on the show.
Yes,
So we'll see you next time on here on the Fantasy Sports News and World Report.